Okay, so welcome everyone, and I hope you can hear me. You all can hear me, and we are running out of time. We are just starting our session, and we are very happy that you guys are joined. We have more than 20 members joined in this session, and this session is going to be a blast. And this session is very special because we are going to discuss about the integration start point and how we can perform the integration between ERP to CRM, between Dynamics 365 customer engagement and with Dynamics 365 finance and operation. So there is a concept called as dual write, which is very, very important for developers to learn. And so without wasting our time, let us straightly go to our session. I will thank you to I thank you to Rakesh to give his time to encourage to our community for giving this talk. So I will hand over the talk to Rakesh to start his session. And thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thank you, Sanjay. And thanks, everyone. Welcome to the Mumbai, India Dynamic 365 Power Platform and User Group community. So in terms of agenda today, we are going to run the multiple series of discussion focusing on cross-app learning, mainly on the dual write and the virtual entity. So it is a 6 weeks of series where we are going to talk about each and every aspect right from the infrastructure until the implementation. Okay, but before I deep dive into a discussion, let me just quickly introduce myself. So my name is Rakesh and I'm a senior solution architect and center of excellence lead at TCS. I am specialized in finance and operation app, predominantly on the architecting aspects and the core aspects of performance and helping customer for their successful go live. The aim of this series is more focus on to understand the cross-platform capabilities, and you might have also heard a buzzword about the Power Platform and the Finance and Operation Platform Convergence series. So this is nothing but our learning which we are trying to share with the community, some of the best practices as well as some of the key design considerations which is typically required to evaluate whether the dual write is the right fit for scenarios which is required for customer to fulfill their need or the problem statement, at the same time the virtual entity. As I mentioned earlier, it's 6-day sessions per week. We are going to talk about at least 1 hour of session each week, every Saturday. So the idea or the approach towards this particular learning series and the main objective and the format is basically to start from basic to advanced capability, try to help community to understand more in a detailed way. As we go further, we will try to also share more information on the upcoming events and all. Okay, so let us focus more and a bit of a objective and the format of this particular session. So as I mentioned, it's a 6-day sessions where we will start with the basic of dual write and the whole infrastructure of dual write and the virtual entity and how it is going to help to resolve the customer problem statement, right? Because whatever the technology stack that we are trying to implement, it is built for a specific purpose, right? So that is where the problem statement comes into picture. And then we will also share our learnings as we go further. In terms of agenda for next 6 weeks, as you can see here on the slide, we will start with the first basic information of getting started with the cross app, just to help you to understand what does it mean by the cross app, what are the technology stack that comes under the cross app capabilities. Then we will also touch base more on the virtual entity, which is also one of the technology stack that comes under the platform converges or the cross app series. Session 3, we will try to learn more on the key design consideration in terms of whether the list of use cases to be required to be fulfill the need for the customer purpose is a really dual write is the right fit or virtual entity is really helpful to fulfill that need. On a session 4, we will focus more on the troubleshooting and performance, where we will try to share the some of the aspects of troubleshooting. If at all, if there are any challenges you face, what are the options that are available out of the box, which help developer or a consultant to understand and share that excellence and bring that excellence to the customer. In the session 5, we will try to more focus on the ALM aspect, right? Because any technology that we are trying to enable for the customer should be fulfill the need of the entire life cycle of that application management, right? So we will touch base on the application lifecycle management perspective. And in the same session, we will also talk about more on the extensibility feature, because this is what the beauty of this cross apps applications, where it does allow you to extend the out of the box capability. On top of that, you can also customize the way you want. We will also try to touch base on the list of error handling scenarios in the same session. If at all, if there are any issues occurs, what sort of error messages that has been driven by the platform itself, and as a technical consultant, if there is a need to understand more the nitty-gritty of that, we will see that how it will help. And then towards the end of the series, we will have the hands-on experience on the business use case with the help of virtual entity, where we will try to walk you through the real business case and how both the apps, that is a customer engagement and the finance and operation app, how both the apps are coming together with the help of cross-app technology, so that you will learn the entire series and you will try to implement this learning to your implementation and wherever you're doing for the customer need. Okay, then I'll move on to next slide. In terms of agenda today, these are the topic that we have listed. So it will be a 60 minutes of session. However, in this 60 minutes of session, the first 30 minutes, I'm going to talk about more on the understanding of core fundamentals that I strongly feel that everybody should aware of that, whether it's a functional consultant, whether you are a technical consultant or architects. So that is where we are going to more focus on the problem statement, why we need these cross apps, and what is how it is going to be help customer, and why only dual write, why not virtual entity or vice versa. Then we will talk about more on the technical architectural aspect of dual write and some of the key core concepts of dual writes. Okay, so that will help you to implement in a more simpler manner. At the same time, it will also help you to configure and install those components which comes with the product of dual write, right? Then we will also touch base something related to licensing, because this is also one of the key factor when we propose any new technology stack to the customer, right? So it is very important to understand what are the licensing component that taken into consideration when we suggest a dual write or any sort of cross app technology stack. And towards the end, I will try to help you out the infrastructure that I have set up across both the apps, customer engagement and finance and operation app. And I will try to help you out the one-click user experience from an admin perspective and from an end user perspective, how it look like. Okay, so I think it is quite a lengthy topic, but I'll try to cover in next 60 minutes or so. Okay, but before I move on to next slide, and before I deep dive more on the problem statement, I will just quickly go back and I will quickly initiate a poll. I would request everyone to answer that poll. That will help me to judge and understand the level of expertise that you guys are having, and that will also help me to deep dive more on the subsequent sessions that we have planned. Okay, so you will see a poll that has been available on your chat window right away, and you would like to just tell me whether it is, have you worked with any Dynamic 365 cross app earlier or not, right? So I'll take a pause of next 30 seconds or so.
Hi Rakesh, can you enable chat option for every participant?
Let me do that.
the chat and mic is disabled, so you can enable that.
I think chat is by default disabled. So, okay, that's fine. I think
we can move on.
I think I'll move on to next point. Maybe
yes.
Next session we will try to enable it. So I'll just go back to the slide deck, and if you have any question, probably you can raise your hand, and accordingly we will enable the microphone, and then we will allow to talk. Okay. So going back to the slide deck. So what is the problem statement here, right? So I think I'm sure many of you must be aware and maybe work in the past how both the applications were running in the silos from a data perspective and from a business process perspective. So that is the problem statement, and that is where Microsoft is trying to aim to unify the data. So if you think about a scenario in the past where the customer were using the CRM and the ERP solutions to monitor and to record their end-to-end business processes. Just for the benefit of everyone understanding, I just try to highlight two core processes over here. One is a quote to order and the other one is order to cash, where the quote process is being initiated from a customer or customer relationship management perspective app, and the whole order processing or fulfillment happens in a finance and supply chain management app, right? So this is a typical scenario with a customer. Whereas in the legacy world, it was tough to manage that situation, as we had tried to highlight in this infographic, so that you can understand what I'm trying to highlight here. The application do not share the common data, right? Because both the applications build for a specific purpose. One is for a customer relationship management and the other one is for the resource enterprise resource planning perspective for finance and supply chain management, right? So, but obvious, not having a common platform to share the data, and that is where the customer were struggling to unify the data. Though there were couple of loose couple options that customer used to take with the help of partner implementation. For example, earlier we used to use this concept of Dynamics Connector, where the CRM 2013 version or on-prem version can try to connect to the AX 2012, the previous version of Finance and Operation app, or R2 or R3 version. There were custom options also used to take. One was the SSIS, where the SSIS packages can be executed in the background, which is to call the web services from CRM and pushing the data into the ERP world. That is where the custom web services option also one of the. Another option that I have personally seen in the past, where the staging SQL database, right? Someone is to just put a staging layer, and the asynchronous call happens behind the scene through a batch processes from a CRM to ERP or ERP to CRM, right? Eventually, it was delaying in the process from a business process perspective. It was creating a lot of troubles in terms of the data, because data was managing into both the applications, data model were different, so on and so forth, right? And one of the key aspect that the IT was literally struggling in that aspect when it comes to any error happens, right? Error could be a data related error or error could be any application. From that perspective, it was really tough or difficult to manage the entire, the customer error handling mechanisms. Okay, and it has to be completely managed by the partner or the customers. Okay, but in the cloud world, the cross app, the concept that is a platform convergence, right, is aiming to resolve that problem statement by bringing both the application together. It means unifying a data together, and not only a data, unifying the user experience together, right? So someone is working on the account to be created in CRM or a customer engagement perspective, that customer will be automatically reflect into the finance and operation app, or vice versa, right? That is where the dual write and the virtual entity concept comes into picture. Now I'll move on to the next slide, which is more on the what is and why dual write. That is what the core topic of our today's discussion, right? So many of you probably are aware that dual write has been launched in the year of 2019, stating that it is a mechanism in terms of it is an infrastructure that allows you to provide a tightly coupled integration. Okay, and when it comes to integration, it is bi-directional integration between both the apps, that is financial operation app as well as the customer engagement app. But it is not stopping over there just a customer engagement app. That is where the data works, because from a customer engagement app perspective and Power Apps perspective, everything is tightly, coupled together with the Dataverse. So that is where this dual write is an infrastructure by definition, which allows you to tightly couple that integrations. However, once you enable any sort of tables or entity to perform that activity of data to be synchronized, predominantly your create, update, and delete actions from both the app perspective, it immediately reflect that data as part of commitment of data into the Dataverse tables, and that in a near real-time fashion or vice versa. Okay, so I just try to highlight the examples for everyone understanding. Think about a scenario where a change of customer entity happens in the finance and operation app, and I purposefully mention the customer entity in from a finance and app perspective because it's a data entity, it's abstractions of set of tables that does exist in the finance and operation app, and that entity, as soon as something got changed, immediately the actions happens behind the scenes, which reflect that information in a real-time fashion to the account table or account entity in a Dataverse or a vice versa. Okay, so this infographic view try to highlight how this data is happening with the help of this infrastructure of dual write. Then I'll move on to the high-level architecture of dual write. With my understanding, if I just try to read this slide from left to right, I just try to add a couple of animations so that you guys can understand and just follow this number along with me. As you can see here from left to right, a Dataverse to finance and operation apps. So whenever the tables that contains data and the data got changed in Dataverse from a customer engagement app perspective or from a Power Apps perspective, immediately the plugins get enabled and the plugin validates with the help of the mapping. I'll just talk about in detail in subsequent slide, and towards the end we will see that how that mapping works across both the apps. And then once the validation of mapping done, then the plugin start pushing the data to the entity of finance and operation app. So those who are joined from finance and operation app probably would understand it's a data entity, and the data entity push the data from a staging table to the target table, which is the business table, right? So it's a OData call, and it's tightly coupled. It's a asynchronous call, and it's a point-to-point integrations. However, if something got failed over here before the data got committed as part of this finance and operation app, immediately user will see an error message in that application where the information or the data is being originated, and automatically it will start giving the error message. On the right hand side, from a financial app perspective, it's just the flip side of this window where you will see the whenever the changes happen to the data entity of financial operation app, it immediately recognizes the event on that entity that has been written inside the Dataverse infrastructure and validate the mapping. Okay? And once the mapping is done, then it will push the data to the tables of Dataverse, again with the help of OData technology. So that is how it is, the high level architecture. As I mentioned earlier, it is tightly coupled, it is synchronous call. In a subsequent session, maybe in a session 5, I will talk about more in detail how a single record transaction commitment happens and how the multiple record transaction happens, right? Then I'll move on to next slide, which is more on the licensing app perspective. So as you can see here, the dual write comes with the no licensing cost. So there is no specific license is required for dual write to enable. You can go and download the dual write, two core solutions. One is a core solution and one is the anchoring solution, which is available in App Stores. You can install it. I'll just quickly navigate as we go further towards the end of the hands-on activity. But from a license perspective, it does not require any specific license. However, there is a concept of restricted and unrestricted tables from a licensing perspective, and you can always look for the latest licensing guide where set of entities have been defined in the licensing guide, and those entity indicates whether those entities are restricted or non-restricted. Okay, so for architects and consultant, the point to be noted where there's a list of entity to be taken into consideration when you are designing your solution as far as the dual write is concerned. So for example, if a financial user is using one of the capability of the product and they are using the dual write for the integration. However, from an invoicing perspective, that invoice entity is marked in the licensing guide as a restricted table, right? In that scenario, we need a license for that particular user based on action that user is going to perform in that particular rights. So this is all about licensing. However, I would like to just add one more point over here, which is when you design your solution, you need to also take it into consideration. Do you really require the data to be, passed to that Dataverse entity, because it requires the data to be staged. When it comes to near time, it holds the data into the Dataverse table. So you need to also take it into consideration what is the database size is going to be there in future, if at all, if you are going with the multiple data to be synchronized between both the apps. We will talk about in detail in subsequent sessions of session 3, more design considerations, and we'll talk in more detail as far as that aspect. Then I'll move on to next slide, which is a key concept of dual write. So why I have added this slide, because many folks reach out to me in the past stating that there is a nice documentation available in docs.microsoft.com, but at the same time, sometimes there is a confusion, the real purpose of dual write or the key concepts. Okay, so I just try to highlight the 3 aspects over here based on my learning. One is the near real-time experience. That is where we are resolving the customer pain point. Then there is also need of extensibility and the reliability of the data while the data is being synchronized between both the application. And third is the additional capability that has been added in the Dataverse, because there are new capabilities are required to be added in Dataverse because data to be synchronized from ERP, for example, currency and so forth. So I'll go one by one. I'm not going to go into more detail in the interest of time. But I'll just try to touch base couple of high-level points so that you guys can understand the key concept of dual writes. The very first point in the category of near real time of experience, which is nothing but your live syncs, right? So live sync is one of the capability in the dual write, which allows you to, once you enable the map, which will automatically sync the data as soon as you commit the data into one application, and it will reflect immediately into another application within a few fraction of second. That is where the near real-time scenario comes into picture. But in addition to this, there is also capability available in the dual write where you can play and pause the data. For example, there is a downtime plan for one of the application, whether it's a financial operation app or a customer engagement app, and you have plenty of maps enabled to synchronizing your master data, your reference data, or some sort of transaction data. As part of this dual write enablement, we can always go back and pause that map, and behind the scenes the data will be queued. It will be visible for admin to see the queue, and then once the system is up and running, you can enable that information and it will continue processing the data. There is also ability to sync the initial data. So think about a scenario where you have set up both the applications together, and the one of the application holding the account, another that is ERP holding a customer, and you want to sync the initial data. You identify that the customer engagement app is my primary source as part of business function for my account, but I want all those accounts that I have loaded in the customer engagement app to be synchronized back to my ERP as a customer, right? So there is the ability available to synchronize the initial data, which will allow you to synchronize before you enable your actual updates. Okay. Then there is also ability where you can go and see the list of activity, a detailed activity log, so that if at all, if there is need for more verbose to be captured or some sort of telemetry to be captured, you can always go and refer that activity and error logs. There is also a good feature available as part of dual write infrastructure, which is alert and threshold, where you can define the alerts. So think about a scenario, your map went into maybe a error state, and you want to alert, automatic alert or email to be sent. You can go and configure that. I will show you that experience, how it looks like. And last is the unified UI. So from a end user perspective, it's a single UI. From a Dynamics App Console perspective, they can go and navigate to customer engagement and the financial operation app together. In terms of extensibility and the reliability, dual write comes with the 100 plus out of the box entity maps. However, every implementation is unique where you need some additional logic to be added, right? That is where the customized out of the box capability comes into picture. So dual write allows you to configure and extend two types of feature. One, you can extend the existing map that has been shipped with the product, and you can modify it, and you can also start versioning it based on the changes that you are doing. At the same time, you can also add your custom entity, and that custom entity can also be part of your map, and that map can also be synchronized back with your Power Apps or maybe customer engagement app perspective. It does provide ALM support, so whatever the map that you're going to create, you can add as a solution inside the Power Apps, and that will be automatically enable the one-click experience within the finance and operation app. In terms of enhancement to the Dataverse, for those who are working in the last couple of years for a Dataverse from a customer engagement Power App perspective, as soon as you enable a data writes or dual write solutions inside a dual write, you will see a couple of entities with the additional capability to have that seamless capability or business functionality experience as similar to ERP. One of the key functionality is the currency, because currency is the backbone in the ERP from a finance perspective. So a couple of changes you would see in the customer engagement and a Dataverse entity. Then there is a new concept in Dataverse like company and party. We will try to highlight, we will talk about in more detail in the session 3 once we understood the session 1 and session 2 on dual write and virtual entity. And there we will try to focus more what does it mean by company from a financial app perspective, how it is connected to the organization hierarchy, how the table relations works. Then another announcement is the financial data and tax data, right? That is where when it comes to a scenario of prospect to cash, your pricing engine needs to be there, right? So all these information that has been enhanced in the Dataverse as soon as you enable the dual write solution inside the Dataverse. On to next slide, which is again a core features of dual write, which will give you a more idea on the list of topic. I think most of the point we have covered in previous slide. However, I would like to touch base one key aspect over here, which is the ability to filter and transform the data. So as I mentioned in the beginning, both the apps are using two different data models, but obvious both the apps are having two different technology. Dataverse is a unique data base, however, in financial app perspective, it's a SQL server. So both the apps tables are having different data types. So there is the ability available in the dual write exist where you can go and transform the data. So think about a scenario in the from a financial app perspective, we have enums. We define the enums and enum values. However, in the Dataverse side, there is an option list, right? So there is a need of transformation is required, and that capability you will see as a one single click experience within the finance and operation app. I will quickly show you how to add those filters and that navigation experience. Then there is another ability is an offline mode where you can have the online and offline or asynchronous mode enablement as part of that individual map, which allow you to synchronize data from both the apps. Okay. In addition to this, you will also see a dependency and the sequencing of graph, as you might have seen, right? In the finance and operation app, when it comes to one single entity, though we are considering as a data entity, which is customer V3, but behind the scenes there are multiple tables are involved, right? Which is your cust table, your global address table, your customer group, so on and so forth, right? So as soon as you enable any map, there is the ability in the dual write which will allow you to see a dependency of those entities or tables inside that information, so that as soon as you enable it, you will see that information and the data is tightly coupled with the relationship of that particular table. Now we'll talk about more on the functional scenarios, and this will probably help you to understand and help your customer where the direct fit for the dual write or a cross app series, right? So first is the integrated customers and the vendor master, right? Most of the times I have also personally seen that customer need a unified data from a customer or a vendor master data. I just try to highlight 2 masters, but you can enable it for your required relevant master as well. So customer need one application to be, as a master. However, the another application should automatically synchronize, because most of the core business processes are dependent on that. So that is where the enablement of master data. Then there is awareness of organization hierarchy, because this is a key concept of in the Dataverse or customer engagement perspective. Then there is an on-demand price engine. So for example, if you want to enable the prospect to cash scenario, it is always recommended to use the price engine of ERP, because it has a lot of dependencies with the financial calculation. For example, in financial operation app, if you want to enable the pricing, you can enable the pricing at a item master level. You can also enable your trade agreements, and trade agreement comes with bunch of additional capabilities based on the requirement of a customer, and it is tightly coupled with your financial accounting entries as well, right? So that is where on-demand pricing engine is also one of the supported scenario in the dual write. Then there is a integrated prospect to cash experience in as per the supported functional scenarios. Another point which is newly introduced, which is the party and the global address, where you can enable a similar type of experience which we used to have in the finance and operation app, where a party can be a customer, vendor, prospects, or employee. Same can be enabled by installing the global address book capability in the Dataverse side. I'll quickly move on to next slide, and I just wanted to double click on the aspect which I talked about in the previous slide. I'll just quickly go back to this slide. So I just mentioned, if you remember it correctly, the how that mapping, the map that we are going to create, right? So I just try to highlight the high level view. So map comes with typically 5 statuses. Each and every status has specific actions triggers. By default, the map will be in a running state. As soon as you enable the map for the initial sync, it will immediately start synchronizing the data from one application to another application based on the direction that has been set up inside the map. As soon as you enable the initialization, then it will move on to the running state where the entity is enabled for the dual write, and there you will get an ability as an action to either a pause or a stop that action, right? As soon as you pause that, it will be still in running state because that is how it is queuing the data, and all new requests will be in a queue state. If you want to enable it again, you can go and resume it, and that is how it will start catching up the queued record first, and it will start synchronizing from that point on. We will see in actions in a few minutes of time. So this slide talks about more on the copy of pre-existing data. As you can see here in this slide, I just mentioned the initializing, but I just wanted to, double click more on this aspect, because I personally seen that many consultants try to refer this information of initial data for many purposes, and I just try to highlight a couple of them. But this option comes with a lot of limitations which we need to understand. As you can see here, what it allows you to synchronize your data, which is sharing both the application very separately. So you can see here example, you have a customer record of A1 and A2, and as soon as you enable the initial sync from dual write perspective, it will add that A1 and A2 as a contact inside a Dataverse. However, if the Dataverse has C3 and C4 as a separate record, which does not exist earlier in the financial operation app, it will also sync it back to the financial operation app, right? So that is how the key feature of initial write. However, there are a lot of limitations. I'll just quickly walk you through so that you can understand the core aspect and the nitty-gritty of it. So first of all, this initial sync is basically designed for a simple use cases where the data and the payload size is very small. It does not support for the table maps with 10 plus lookups. So if you have a table which contains more than 10 lookups value, it does not support that value. So that is where while designing the solution, you need to take it into consideration of this particular initial sync option. it does not support the self-references of table maps, where you have a two table maps and both the tables are sharing a common tables, common entity. We don't support that. Then it is not recommended for data migration. I have seen in the data migration where the customer try to use, or partner also try to use the this option of initial write for the data to be synchronized, just to avoid the initial manual load activity. But the option of initial write is not built for the purpose of your data migration activity, because it is required for some sort of simple use cases. And if you are planning to do that, then you will see a lot of issues in terms of timeout issues, or in terms of data is not synchronizing both the app correctly. However, there are certain approaches that has been described in the docs as well by Microsoft. If at all, if there is need to do that for a one-time data load activity from both the app, it is always recommended to use the existing data migration templates with the help of Azure Data Factory, which will allow you to import the data into Dataverse using the data migration template. However, for finance and operation app, if you want to load the customer data, you can always go and use the data migration frameworks, right? And in that data migration framework, you can use and load the data the way we typically do. On the right hand side, just try to highlight the view of how the customer and account entity is tightly coupled with the dependent entities of your currencies, which is your transaction currencies, your payment days, which is your payment days entity in Dataverse, and your customer group in the Dataverse. So with that, now I'll move on to I'll just switch the window and I'll navigate to the application where we will try to see the look of the navigation path of financial operation and the Dataverse. Okay, there you go. So as soon as you launch the finance and operation app, you need to navigate to the system admin module. Go to the data management workspace. In the data management workspace, you will see a tile called dual rights. So the assumption here is that I have already set up the infrastructure part which is required for dual write to be enabled between Dataverse and the finance and operation app. And I'm assuming that you guys have already understood that point. However, I'll just quickly navigate and show you the solution that I have already attached or installed in the Dataverse, so that you can understand. So this is a trial instance that I have spin up for sales and enable the two apps which is required for dual write to be enabled. One is a dual write core and the dual write anchor solution, right? And then as soon as you do that, there are a bunch of activity to be performed inside the financial operation app. Once you do that, then you will see this dual write slide. As soon as you click on the dual write tile, it will help you to navigate to the same experience of your Dataverse inside the financial operation app. I'll just quickly click over here. There you go. So as you can see here, I have already linked the environment of Dataverse that you can see here on the top of the dual right screen. There are a bunch of options are available. I'll just quickly navigate to each and every options, and then we will towards the end we will open for Q&A for next 5 or 10 minutes or so. So as you can see here, these are the all table maps. So maps are nothing but the list of entities. Those are going to be connect from both the apps. Okay, so I have enabled the couple of maps for a testing purpose and for a demo purpose. As you can see here, I have enabled for the customer group. So as soon as I click on the table maps, I will see all the required fields that is enabled from both the side, which is my finance and operation side and the Dataverse side. You can see the direction as well. This is the customer group table from finance and operation, and this is a table from the Dataverse perspective. Okay. I'll quickly go back to the first slide and navigate you to each and every options. So as you can see here, it will allow you to give the environment details. You will see what are the environments that you have connected to this integration. The list of legal entity, because any data that is being created inside a financial operation app is connected or it is tagged to the data area ID, which is the legal entity ID or a company ID. So that is where the legal entity needs to be referred, needs to be set up when you enable that setup experience. Then you can also define the integration key, which is required for your map to be enabled. So I'll just quickly walk you through the map that I have created so that you can understand what I'm trying to highlight. Then there is an integration key, what we just talked about. In the alert setting, you can see here, you can create a list of alert setting based on the alert conditions, list of error types. We will talk about in detail in subsequent sessions when we try to deep dive more on each and every aspect when this error comes, what is the significance of 401 or 403, and then we will deep dive more on that. You can also define the minutes or hours based on your conditions or based on your requirement. There is another option called the apply solution, and that is where the ALM topic comes into picture. If you have any custom map, you can apply that map. Right now, this is out of the box maps that I try to implement or apply over here. That is really interesting. Then you can see here the health check. So health check is the option which allows you to validate whether the environment is correctly connected. For example, it comes with the prerequisites of your platform update of finance and operation app. It also allows you to tell you the solution that has been connected to that particular dual write. Then it will also tell you the list of orchestration solution that you have implement or install in the Power Apps or maybe the Dataverse, and it will give you a app user ID. These are all part of your configuration, and that is one-time configuration. One of the key things that I would like to highlight, dual write supports a single tenant. So think about a scenario, the financial operation app is running in one tenant and the Dataverse in different tenant, then it is not supported yet. It is required for a single tenant. However, it is also recommended that if you have a same tenant, but it is also recommended from a latency perspective, you should have a same region for a financial operation app and the Dataverse. At the same time, we'll also go and navigate to list of maps. On the right hand side, you will see all the filters over here. You can use whether it's active, running or pause. You can always correlate what I tried to highlight in the previous slide deck. I'll just quickly filter on the customer group, or I can directly go by clicking on run. As soon as I click on the run, you will see here, these are the maps that I have enabled it earlier. I'll just go inside this map. As soon as I click on the map, it is giving me ability to select what is happening inside that table, which is or entity of a customer group. If I start from right to left, you will see a table mapping. Here you will see all the table mapping and the list of action. I'll go one by one so that we will see options, what it allows from a capability perspective. When you click on the option over here, it allows you to transform and set the directions. Okay, so you can define the direction of a data at your attribute level as well. That is, we are seeing direction, whether it's a bidirectional or the unidirectional. And if at all, if there is a need for a data to be converted because of the two different data types, then you can also do that. You can see here, right? In the financial operation app, it requires it has enum which contains the value of no and yes. However, in a Dataverse, it is true and false. So you can do that value mapping with the help of value mapping options, and it will automatically move that information at that attribute level from financial operation app or vice versa or bidirectional. Okay. At the same time, you can also see activity log. You can see all the activity the day I enable the map and the map creation activity, map running activity, and so on and so forth. You can also see the initial sync detail, as I mentioned earlier, right? Initial sync allow you to synchronize the data from your source to target. So if I define my source is financial operation app, it will go back and reflect the data into Dataverse accordingly. If you are going to pause that map by using these options, you will see those list of record. If at all those records are going to be created by the user in the previous pause state, then you will see that information will be in the queued record and you can filter it. If there are any errors, you will see a bunch of errors in the catch-up error section and more details of this, right? In terms of the dependency of these aspects. Then I'll go back to again the main version where you will see the customer group. As soon as you select the customer group, that is which is your individual app which is running in current running state, you will see a table mapping and a table version. So table map version allows you to version your map, whether it is existing map or customized app, and you can do the versioning. For example, this is a map that has been shipped with the product, and I have added an additional field in this customer group which I wanted to synchronize as part of my custom business process. I can do the versioning of the map. Okay. In the table mapping, you will see the information that we have seen in the past, the list of table mapping. You need to always click on the run, and in the activity log and the initial sync, I think we have seen this. In the queue log, I think which I wanted to highlight is the information. But before that, let me just quickly create a one record, and I'll show you how that record reflect back to the the Dataverse. So I'll just quickly go back and do the recent activity in the customer groups. So as you can see here, I have mapped the USMF company as part of my company information. If I go back to the Dataverse, data tables, you'll see here the customer group. As soon as you click on the customer group, click on the data, you will see the data that I have already enabled on 29th of September as part of the initial sync. But if I go back and create the new record inside the customer group, just bear with me, I think system is running slow. There you go. So as you can see here, we have total 8 records as a customer group. let me just quickly create a new record over here. As soon as I commit the action as part of my create event, the logic gets executed on a data entity, and that information will be reflected here. As you can see here, as soon as I refresh the data, that information will be available over here as part of the customer group. Okay. If I go back here and again, if I select this particular record and I want to just fire a action as a delete, and if I just quickly go back here and refresh the data, it will automatically get deleted from the Dataverse as well. So that is how it is tightly coupled from both the application perspective. In a subsequent session, we will have more deep dive in a hands-on perspective. So I think I'll take a pause now. Sanjay, are there any questions?
We do not have any questions till now. We can proceed further. We do not have any questions till now.
I think we'll give 4 or 5 minutes if someone has any questions.
Okay. If anyone have any question, you can raise your hand and you can ask. Okay, Neela Devi wants to ask some question.
Yeah, Neela Devi, I think we have enabled the mic for you.
Yeah, hi, thanks for that. I just type in the chat. Just a quick question. So, for example, you said I know the basic dual write configuration, which we have done before, but I have a question like if there is any change in the account entity in the CE and in the FinOps at the same time, how the sync works, which one will go,
Yeah, so it takes the priority on based on a record that has been created in a time. So for example, if you have the account created first time, which is in a customer engagement app, that will reflect. So in both the application, you will see the same information. But I got your point. So sometimes that sort of clarity is also required when the record is being created, which is a two separate record in both the apps.
Oh, yeah. No, I mean like if there's a same record for the first time, it will automatically create in the FinApps when the CE syncs, right? For example, if the customer in the CE updates something on the account record and the same entity in the FinApps get updated, then how that will sync? So is there any priority that we can choose that CE is the master data, something like that, or?
Yeah, you can define the priority in the map where you can see the initial source is your C. Based on that, your information will flow. So that priority is there in the map.
Oh, yeah, sure. So if my priority is on the CE, then the data will be synced from CE to FinOps, not on the other way. Is that correct?
No, no.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah.
Thanks, Neela Devi.
Thanks.
Questions. Any other guy? Any more question we want to ask? Okay, no more questions, Rakesh. But anyway, we understand that dual write is not at all a 1 hour session. We are going to conduct this month every Saturday to complete, to coverage the whole scenarios of dual write. So we are having more sessions on this dual write to be a master in this session. So if you have completed, we can stop the session today. Rakesh, over to you.
Yeah, I think we can conclude if there are no further questions from the team.
Oh, okay, that's fine then. And we are so happy that you gave some enlightenment in dual write concept in Dynamics 365 ERP and CRM interconnections. Previously, we used Dynamics connectors, but as it is, everything is moving to cloud. So the only option we have is implementing dual write, and what mappings and what conditions and what other factors that are part of the dual right we will discuss more in subsequent sessions. And I will extend my gratitude to each and everyone who are part of this session. And we are very happy also that community is interested to conduct this type of sessions every Saturday. And meet you everyone next Saturday to continue with the rest part of this dual right session. Thank you everyone. See you.
Thank you all.
Thank you all.